we are going to look at the sales order processing side of GP, more from a financial perspective, and really it's kind of like a day in the life of an invoice in GP. Obviously, some of you use sales order processing to issue invoices out of GP. So for those of you that do, you can check your email and get a drink because you might find this a little, I'm sure that you could come up here and demo it also. But there's a lot of you that maybe aren't using sales order processing or are just using receivables management. So we're just going to walk through a transaction. And one of the things I do want to focus on here is the ability to bulk email. So you can create a group of invoices, and as you hit print, they will automatically email out to customers. So some of the things we're going to look at today: GP email setup, and then email setups on the customer record. We will then look at the different options for sales invoice templates. Because I am a financial person, we are going to use non-inventoried items, so we'll talk a little bit about that. And then we'll create a sales invoice, walk it all the way through to a cash receipt, and we'll actually talk about how you can do write-offs of amounts during the cash receipt process. So to set up emailing in GP, to be able to email out sales invoices, that setup is on the administration area page in GP. Like I said, we'll also then cover or look at where to set up emails on the customer record. So this is actually on the customer address window, which we'll look at here in a moment. We're going to talk again about the sales templates and how you can have different invoices for different billing types out of GP. We're going to use non-inventoried items. So GP, for those of you that don't know, in the inventory module in GP, we can set up non-inventoried items. And there are 3 types that we can select from: miscellaneous charges, services, and flat fees. These would allow you to create detailed line item sales invoices, but obviously we're not tracking quantities or anything. It's just for informational purposes. So I am going to hop over to GP, and first off, I'm going to go to my administration area page. And I'm going to go here to the email setup window. So here, like I said, is where we can set up or turn on emailing out of GP. You notice you have the ability to create or email out several types of documents. You can email out a Word document, an HTML, a PDF, or an XPS. If you want to email out PDF, which is typically what people prefer to do because it can't be changed or overwritten, you do have to have Adobe installed, correct?
Or not to actually have the PDF, using the engine within Word to transmit.
Oh.
So you don't have to have it for that anymore.
Okay, that's right. So, yeah, as Sean said, it will actually use the PDF engine within Microsoft Word. So you don't actually have to buy an Adobe license for that any longer. So some of the documents that you can email out of GP, as we're going to look at today, sales invoices, but there are also other things. Sales quotes, sales orders, receivables, transactions, credit memos, returns. On the purchasing side, you can email out purchase orders, drop ship, purchase orders, so EFT remittances. So there's a wide variety of documents you can now email out of GP. besides just sales invoices. You can also set up email messages. So if you are emailing out sales invoice, you can have a standard email message that goes out, attached are your invoices, please, pay immediately, or whatever. So that's a little bit on where to go to actually set up the email. Once that part is set up, we go over to the sales module, and we go up to our cart section. And we'll pick a customer here. So email address setup is attached to the customer addresses. So if I click on the little globe button there, here is where we can enter our email addresses for each customer. You can have multiple email addresses. You're not limited to just one. It's similar to Outlook. You can just put a semicolon in between each email address. So how many of you are emailing out of GP at this moment? A few of you.
We are on the purchasing side, but
not on the sales side? Okay.
Think
of all the postage you could be saving.
Our ears perked up when you said you're talking about that.
Well, it is really nice because how it works is it actually sends out of your Outlook account. So you see the sent emails in your Outlook sent file. So it's a way to track. There's also, you get a report if an email didn't go through, if, you have a bad email address or something, you do get an exception report. So.
Can you preview the email before it gets sent out, or is it automatically sent out?
It just goes. What a lot of times people do is they set it up and they put their email address in first while we're testing it. So you email yourself, and then once you're comfortable, it'll just go.
Never flip the switch until you have it looking good for yourself.
Yeah.
You can also do a print screen.
Yeah, you can print the form to the screen. And
right.
The mail message, because also in the email message you can actually put data elements in there too. So you'd have the email message go to somebody, and it would strategically pull the invoice number into, let's say, the subject, and then there's actually pulling line item details into the message below and things like that. So different strategies you can take with it, but yeah, preview first.
Yeah, one other thing I wanted to say here. Here you also decide or set up in GP whether you're going to embed the documents in the message of the email body or if you're going to send as attachments. So.
Or both.
Or both. Sir.
Does this integration work with any email client other than Outlook?
It's all anything that's mapping compliant.
Okay.
So
okay.
Outlook, it works best. We've tried with some other emails, and so we have to
I remember
play
getting
by
an email
ear.
from a customer a while back saying that they were able to manipulate something in the set file or somewhere in the program and have it kick out of a different.
It worked. I was able to get email to flow from the previous screen where the email button is, and we have dynamic 10, and I was able to get it to use Thunderbird to attach it.
I was going to say that you're the one I'm referring to.
I was the one, and but I just wonder if this is the exact same mechanism or if it uses a different mechanism than that.
It still needs Outlook as the delivery method, but it can link up to whatever you have as a mapping plan through Outlook. So it could be Yahoo or something like that you have set up through your Outlook that it's pulling in, but it still uses Outlook as the mechanism.
So it would require Outlook to be available on the system.
As far as I know from that side, it's different programming than the setting.
Okay. So it is a
So it has
column.
to be Outlook, because some of the documentation just says as long as it's mapping compliant. But like I said, I think people that have other emails have always kind of had issues. I don't know that we've had much luck with anything other than.
Well, we eventually broke down and bought Outlook for the accounting department.
Well, and I know, another client was trying to get off of Outlook and use other things, and I think they had to go back to it.
Well,
We use Office 365, so you could just get a couple of accounts there and
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, it worked out. I don't know, what version did we end up buying, or do you remember? Yeah. Huh?
I think it was 13.
Office 2013. We got the little card and downloaded it, downloaded it, installed it, worked, fixed all the problems.
Magic.
It's Microsoft Kool-Aid. You drink it, you get addicted.
Exactly.
So you get the bill.
Way too many flavors for each.
Exactly.
So I am going to go into the sales invoice window here in GP. I've already created an invoice. Again, with my non-inventoried items. A couple of cool things. So I know some of you just use receivables to get, invoices out the door or whatever. Sales order processing does give you line item detail invoices. So it is another option for you guys. Even if you're not buying or selling, parts or inventory, you can still use the distribution module. So, for example, I have two line items on this invoice, one for GP support, one for mileage, as an example. If I click on this blue arrow here, you notice it opens up the non-inventoried items. And here's where this description will actually print on my invoice. So you could come in and change the description or whatever and make it pretty detailed. That way people get a good feel for what you are billing them for. So I'm going to save this. It's saved in a batch. So let's go to our sales batches now. And I will pull up that batch. So in this batch, I just have the one sales invoice, but obviously I could have 5 or 10 in here. When I go to the print button over here in the corner, here's where I can print either the documents themselves, so I can come down and say, yes, I want to print all my invoices. You notice here, I can also check the box to send documents in email. So if I have 10 invoices in this batch, emails will go out for all 10, provided that I have the email addresses set up for the customer. In this window, you can also print your edit list if you wanted to run the edit list and review what's in the sales batch before you post it in. You could do that as well.
Well, what if you have some invoices that have the email and some that don't?
So we print the ones that don't and email the ones that do.
So it's one or the other. Even if you have both checkbox checked, it won't print the ones that have email addresses?
You'd adopt a two-process system at that point. If you wanted to print all your invoices and email all of them, you would go ahead and email them and then reprint.
I got you.
And select the print.
Okay.
So then, if the email was set up, emails would go out. You would look in your Outlook, in your sent folder, and you would see emails to all of your customers there. So obviously, then you have a copy of what did go out.
Question. For us non-IT folks, is there some setup where you have to link it to which email, or it automatically grabs whatever user's using it and grabs their Outlook, or?
So, good question. When you go into that email setup for the first time, you have to set it up for Outlook, but it does recognize who's logged in, doesn't it?
It will, if it doesn't recognize you, it's gonna prompt and bring up a window where you have to put in your user ID.
Just like you normally do where it interfaces?
Just like you log in, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so you're right. So for those of you that are on like a terminal server where there's, 4 or 5 of you on the terminal server at once, whoever's logged in and actually doing the printing, that's what email address it will try to, go from.
So then, do you have to worry about it going to their spam?
Well, whenever you.
You mean to the customer spam?
Yeah. I mean,
Could,
a
yeah,
lot
I
of
mean,
stuff
It
gets caught
might
in there.
the first time. You may want to, give them the heads up the first time, hey, I'm gonna start emailing you, statements, so you may see. Although, if you've emailed them in the past, maybe it won't go
Yeah.
spam.
It's always good to strike up a conversation with any customer that you're gonna do that with, though, just to make sure that they don't have anything in their Exchange server filtering certain file types.
Yeah,
When you're trying
you're
to
right.
send a PDF, that's filtered, well, you could go to embedding the HTML into it and make it a very thin email.
That's probably a good idea.
And that probably would make it through better.
Yeah, because you don't want it to get lost.
But yeah, striking that
Missing
conversation
in action.
is always a good approach.
So it sends it as a PDF, or what's the format send?
If you selected PDF in the email settings, it will send them out as PDF. Or you could send it out as a Word document, an HTML, or an XPS file.
I remember now, sorry.
Customer card, you can actually specify which file type you want to send that individual.
I think some PDFs are blocked. A
Yeah.
lot of people, I think they block them.
It's a big vector for viruses and,
Yeah.
PDF with a vector for that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, and there's a lot of form controls and stuff that people can embed in them,
Right.
Automatic processes, so yeah, they're getting further and further away. And just a quick note too, on the Word document, in 2013, they added password protection for that. So you could send a Word document, you could password protect it, and somebody would have to pass a password before they could make changes to it. So, that was always a fear for sending a Word doc that somebody could,
Right, go in
oh
and,
my goodness, you only charged me $10 for that.
yeah. Oh, I don't know what happened.
Yeah, I want to use this quote.
Yeah. So as you can see, the defaults are set up on the administration page, but then if you needed to, on a customer by customer basis, you could change to either embed or send documents as an attachment, and then here you get the option, multiple attachments per email. You could also set a maximum file size, so if some of your customers, can't accept big files, that here.
I got stopped at customizing Word templates.
Me too at one point. They're a pain sometimes, they really
That's
are.
beyond the scope of this to kind of show what, at least where that is. I mean,
What, to actually design them?
yeah, I mean, they said you had to put a couple add-ins in and.
You do, to be able to add in, you have to have the GP Word add-in, which is part of the installation files on the user client. There's a couple nuances with it. Usually installing it on a server environment and going from there is the best way to work.
Yeah, it was a little, people got excited when they first talked about Word templates being available in GP, and you would just assume that, oh, it's just like a Word document, I can just go in and, it's a little more complex than that. Let's go to Sean.
So it's not as simple as the collection letters and stuff like that?
No, because those are pretty much in Word.
Yeah,
these,
it's dynamic data regions and things like that you have to worry about, and I've had instances where I've blown away a complete data range, adjusting the size of the columns, but it's odd. You always have to remember certain. I can help anybody though.
yeah, Sean's been through it all, so.
Are there any other formats up there besides DocX? Like if you have some old codger like me who doesn't have the latest version, you can not only send it out as DocX, okay?
But there are tie-ins for DocX into older versions of Word too. So you could actually, I think you can add in that file type to older versions of Word also.
You can.
Yeah.
There's a free pack you can download.
Yeah.
Any other questions on this? So once the emails go out and all of the customers receive their invoices, they're gonna be in a hurry to pay you. So now we'll do a cash receipt, because that's the way it always works.
Oh.
Those invoices generate so fast.
I do AR. No.
How long can we sit on this invoice?
How many letters will she write before she turns it over to a higher power that cuts them off?
Exactly. So maybe in September we'll talk about collections and that side of things. Okay, in our world today, they're all eager to pay us and we're just getting money in left and right. So now I'm going to go to the cash receipt window. So obviously, cash receipts, even if you're not billing sales line items out of GP, most of you are using the cash receipt window. I'm going to pick a customer, again, pick my Aaron Fit. What some of you may or may not be aware of, though, is that you can, from within the cash receipt window, write off a document amount. So if, for example, you charge somebody a finance charge or whatever, and they're paying the invoice and they're ignoring the finance charge, and you know you're never going to collect it, you can just write it off at the time of the cash receipt, and then you can be done. So Aaron Fitz has sent me a check for $500. Check number 5678. I'm going to click on the apply button here, and he is paying off this top invoice here. Well, he's not paying it off. You notice he's only paid off $500 of a $938 invoice. So the rest of it, I've talked to him on the phone, and he was disputing the charge. So I'm just going to write off that $438. I'm very generous. I'm feeling generous today. It is. Merry Christmas to Aaron. So here in the write-off field, right down below the apply amount, I can type in the amount that I want to write off. Once I tab off this field, you notice I have a password set. So you can put a password on this so that only people who know the password can actually administer the write-off, so that people left and right aren't giving your money away. But yeah.
But you can set a threshold. You can set a threshold on the user.
Yeah.
Nice.
Did you actually click that right
Not
off?
on the user.
Because mine comes up as just invoice, invoice,
Oh, right.
invoice,
I'm
invoice,
sorry.
invoice.
You have to click, so that's a good question. So yours looks like this, closed.
Yes.
You can click on the
Oh, the down
chevron
arrow. Okay,
down,
all
the
right,
two
all right.
down arrows,
Okay.
and it opens the box
Okay,
up for you.
I'm familiar with that from somewhere else. Okay.
So you will want to make sure that either at the system level or at the customer level, you have a default GL account for the write-off, which we'll look at here in a second. So I'm just going to click OK. Here. And I'm going to click on the distribution button so that we can look at it. So you notice my write-off is going to, I have this set up at the system level that write-offs go to bad debt expense. You can override it here if you want it and take it back out of sales or whatever. But you don't have to wait till the end of the month. You don't have to issue a separate credit memo. You can just do it all in one window and be done if you need to.
So you can overwrite that distribution.
Yep.
You have more control on the individual transaction than you would in the, let's say, the monthly routine for write-offs.
Is there a good way to deal with, let's say they just rounded up to 500, but the bill was originally $499.93. Now they've overpaid you by pennies. Happens all the time.
That is a great question. So there actually is a process for that. Not during the cash receipt process, because obviously at this point they have like a credit hanging out on their account for that 7 cents. I'm gonna go ahead and close this real quick, just to get it out of the way.
So it's right half the bill off, right, when you pay it. You know, passive aggressive people do that to make you do work.
The pennies?
Yes.
Yes.
They resent having pay, so they make it for a little more,
That's right.
so that you have to spend 41 to 48
Puts
cents.
the burden of work on you guys.
Exactly.
So there is, under the routine section, the write-off documents, and this could be done every so often, monthly, quarterly, whatever. And this actually allows you to write off underpayments or overpayments. So it basically will clean up the accounts, either they've overpaid or they've underpaid. It will automatically create either a debit memo or a credit memo on that account and apply it so that the account then shows 0 at the end. You can put off a limit here. You also can put write-off limits on the customer themselves. So here you can put, I have a maximum write-off amount of $25. Anything over $25, that password pops up. So it either works at the cash receipt level or here under routine. And this way you could do a group all at once. So it will show you any customer that has an overpayment amount, it will give you a list. You can preview first, so you don't actually have to process everything at once. You can preview it. Make sure people aren't included that you don't want included. So you could do it by, you could do one customer, you could do all your customers, you could do it by class, or by type.
Can you deselect, have it run and then deselect individual customers or transactions?
Yes, because actually what happens is it will create a batch of transactions, and you can go into that batch and delete, if there's 1 or 2 you want to remove, delete them from the batch.
You know, the preview button here.
Yep.
Uncheck.
Yeah, you can uncheck them there too
Or
in the
still
preview
modify
window.
individual amounts.
So it will just create a batch. It won't automatically post. So there's a couple of steps where you can stop and make adjustments to the list. But it's a quick way to go in and clean up a bunch of things all at once versus going into each one separately, doing a credit memo or a debit memo. It kind of automates the process for you. Yes, sir.
At what level was this function introduced? Is this new to 2013?
Kind of newer, probably.
Kind of newer.
You may have it in 10.
Well,
Check it out.
We have to look for it then.
Go check it out. You will.
I'm pretty sure that I was using it.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not a brand new. So any other questions on this whole process? Because you get to listen to me for a long time. I'm not done yet. I have to hop over and do purchasing now, so. Yes.
Just a little direction. We just started receiving credit card payments, and I saw on the cash receipt side the credit card, and we hadn't used it before, so it's not set up. Can you just direct me where I do the setup for credit cards? Or actually, I hate to say it, we haven't even done set up an EFT. We've just been putting them in as checks.
Oh, ouch.
Ouch. You can just show me where the proper screen is
Of course.
for setting those up. We'd like to get that.
So first off, you create a list of credit cards that you accept or that you use for payment, and that's done on the administration page. So if we scroll down, here's credit cards.
Okay.
And so you would set up, either you receive it, you accept it from customers, or you use it in your purchases. So these are just generic, Visa, Amex, MasterCard.
Okay.
So that's the first step. then you're right, under the cash receipt window, you have the ability to say whether you've received a check or cash or credit card here.
Okay.
Once you click credit card, it's going to look for which credit card to use.
Okay.
Is that compliant?
Huh?
Is it compliant to do that way?
It's not compliant in the sense that we don't store any credit card numbers in GP. So you never want to save the credit card, customer's credit card number here because GP is not GP compliant. You could get into trouble.
Well, where do you want them to save it if they're using this?
Well, this would just be to record the credit card payment coming in. Obviously, it would have to go through some kind of payment gateway like, authorized.net or whatever you guys use to receive that money in. So this will not, this doesn't interface with the banks or anything. It doesn't, none of that. It's just to record a credit card payment that you've received from a customer. So that's a good question.
And then set up for the EFT would be?
The EFT setup is actually a little bit trickier. So EFT setup is actually done on the financial page, and what you're going to need is you're going to need from the bank information on what file format they need in order to read your EFT.
This is to make payments or receive payments?
Both.
Okay.
So how GP works is you can issue EFT payments out of payables, and what happens is it works like a check batch. You would create a batch of EFT payments to your vendors. At the end of that process, GP creates a text file that then you upload to your bank website, and then the bank reads that file and processes your payments that way. So you need that, whatever file format the bank needs, we need to know that ahead of time so that we can set it up. And that gets set up here on the financial page. EFT on the receivable side is, and here's where we set that up. EFT on the receivable side is, again, you go in, you generate EFT payments in GP, you upload that file to the bank, and then the bank will go and pull that money from your customer's account. Each bank is a little bit different in their specifications, and they can typically, if you call them, they can typically give you whatever the format is you need for that. And then we can help you guys get it set up.
And without going any deeper, but GP does use Nacha, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it does. As a matter of fact, that's typically what we start with. Some banks, even though we ask them for the file specifications, they say they can't give them to us, and so we'll just create like a plain Nacha file and send it to them, and then they'll come back and go, oh yeah, we need this here and that. And magically, all of a sudden, then they have the specifications. So I don't know. Magical.
But a Nacha standard is actually a selection, right? You just drop it down, it puts it all in for you.
Yep, it does.
Oh, you got it.
Yeah, so here. So you can create one really quick, whether the bank actually loves this file format or not. But more often than not, I think in every instance, this has had to be tweaked a little bit for each bank. So it typically does not work right out of the box. So any other questions on any of that? Yes.
When you have cash receipts and then you go in to apply invoices, is there a way to sort, and like if you have a huge list of invoices and I just want to sort by dollar amount, is there any way to do that?
Good question. It's kind of limited, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Let's go back and look and see what our options are. notice there's really no way to change the sort. Let's look and see if we can, on some windows, there's like a bind, more on the report than the, yeah. And you can look it up, but unfortunately.
$5.
And to do a smart list?
Yeah, you could do a smart list and just have a smart list of, you know, like transactions by customer or something, because those you could sort. At least to give you the information.
So I thought there was a search function for amount. There's not? It didn't look like it, but I thought there was.
Yeah, I don't see one. Good question. Has anybody been able to search on the mouse?
It says document number, so that wouldn't be
Yeah,
a dollar
it
amount.
looks like it's always looking for the document
That
number.
wouldn't be a dollar.
Why is the amount remaining blue? Is that the amount that you're wanting to search by? The amount remaining down there?
The amount remaining is, so until I apply this $100, this is what's remaining on that particular invoice. So if I click it,
Is that what she's wanting to search by, order by that?
Yes.
Well, if you click that amount remaining, blue link up there, does that?
no, it just takes you back in.
I see, okay.
Yeah, it takes you back into that record.
I see. I got nothing then.
I thought so. Hey, Sean,
Yeah.
is that something that could be configured, like with Extender or something, where you could create? I'm just asking, I don't
The
know.
logic within there, potentially. I'd have to dig into it.
Yeah,
The logic
I don't
side of
know.
things, I'm still a little thin on that, but I was just taking a look real quick to make sure that there wasn't something that snuck in front of me on R2 that I could throw in real quick.
Yeah.
There is a professional services tool that's free out of the box for a little bit more dynamics to applying payments from a receivable side. I don't know if you're into, you know, auto apply or anything along those lines, but there's some controls on auto apply out there for professional services tools out of the box. Just has a window where you can do, you know, ranges of customers, and the other ones are ones, but I think one of the things that I sent over to you guys there, I have to look at for taking care of some of the receivable things. Definitely something to look at. So you're just looking to apply to the largest value and work your way down, or you just want to see?
Sort, yeah. There's some of our customers that have a huge long list of invoices and looking for an amount and
Now,
hard to scroll through all of them.
you know, you can, so here's something that you can do, is instead of doing the cash receipt by customer, you can type in, if they give you the invoice number, you can type in the invoice number right here and it'll go right to that invoice.
Yeah, typically they don't.
We're kind
of,
of,
we have the invoice line, can't find it.
We have the invoice number,
It doesn't line up right,
sort by
yeah.
dollar amount.
They're just happy they spent the money.
Yeah.
Over here and the apply window on the other side, and you sort and search through the smart list and then go back and do a find or something.
Okay. Yeah, that's,
Sorry, no, good question. Unfortunately, we just can't say yes to everything. I know. So, any other questions on cash receipts or invoicing or emailing?
Well, if our customer, they want me to set up so that people will pay us by ACH.
Okay.
So the forms that I'm getting are just basically what's your bank account number, what's the routing number, whatever. So the money goes in the bank account. Then I guess the bank would send me something saying, we received these payments.
Right.
And then do I go in under EFT and post, or
For that, I would do,
just do it?
I would just mark it as cash.
Right, cash receipt,
I would do
ACH.
cash
Oh, and
instead
then
of
just
check.
use like an EFT date for your check number or
Yeah.
something like that, okay,
Yeah.
all right.
So any other questions? I like that you guys are lively today. Sometimes there's like no discussion going on. This is good.
The lights aren't
Yes,
turned
ma'am.
off.
So on the purchasing side, on the same thing, if you use a company card and you want to record that payment, how do you recommend putting that?
So there's one of two ways to do that. So GP does obviously allow you to cut payments or checks, to record them if you're using a credit card, like let's say a company Amex card. And what happens is, so let's say you get an invoice or you pay a bill from Office Depot. Office Depot is a vendor in GP, and there's an invoice for $1,000. You pay that invoice with the Amex credit card. So you enter the payment as a manual payment, and you say, I paid this with my Amex credit card. So the Office Depot invoice, now you don't know Office Depot anymore. They show paid. But what happens then is Amex now has $100 or $1,000 amount sitting out there. So at the end of the month, when you go to pay Amex, all of those amounts that you've used the Amex card for show up, and you can just go down your statement and check them all off, and that should equal your payment amount. So that, in a nutshell, is how that works. The trick is, though, that all of your vendors that you're paying with Amex have to be set up in GP, and you're entering those transactions separately. Some people just use Amex as the vendor and, change the distribution for travel and meals and whatever.
It's not a very accountable way to do it.
You lose some of the detail of who you're, buying what from and
Because you can't
whatever.
do your 1099s that way if you use that.
Right. So there's trade-offs to both.
You don't have to give 1099.
One big 1099 to Amex.
No, to the original company.
You don't give 1099 to vendors that you purchase through a credit card.
Right.
Why not?
The credit card company has to send them.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
They talked about changing that regulation, but they haven't changed it yet.
Thank you, the government.
Well.
How do they know?
How do you think? They're watching us.
Over
That's how they
$600,
know.
right?
On the apply window, did you use a smart list that jumps, that ties to that window based on the document numbers? Say it again? Well, on the apply window, you have the document numbers where the lookup, so could you use a smart list and tie it to that window based on the document number?
Do a go-to?
Go-to? Potentially, yeah, as long as you had it jumping through the correct field step by step, it could fill that in. The only issue is, you might be able to, you'd have to look at it, because you'd have to insert some macros and some functions within that, in the go-to, to have it open the window, populate the customer, populate the document number, strike the find button, put in the document number, jump to it, and let you get on your way. So, potentially, I haven't actually tried that.
Let me write that down.
Yeah, you got that right.
All right. So now we're going to hop over to the purchasing side. So again, we're mixing it up a little bit. We're going to talk about purchase orders here, but we're also going to talk about encumbrance management. So does anybody know what encumbrance management is? Tanya?
Well, I've used it mainly in government.
Exactly.
Yeah, where they allow you to basically encumber or set aside funds before you actually spend them.
Perfect. That's perfect. So GC has a not-for-profit or set of modules. With the business-ready licensing, a lot of you guys own those modules. You're probably not using them, obviously, because you're not, most of you are not-for-profit, isn't it? But you have these tools available. So one of them is this encumbrance management. And basically what it allows you to do is, like Tanya said, encumber or kind of track. I have a budget for this account, and in my example, we're going to talk about capital purchases. So let's say you have a $100,000 capital purchase budget. You want to track and make sure you don't go over that budget. So we can turn on encumbrance management, and it will help you kind of track your expenditures that way. So first thing we're going to look at is on the purchasing page, we actually set up encumbrance management there. So we will look at that. Obviously here, we have each year, we can set up a budget that it will look at. And then you can put a tolerance percentage, either positive or negative. So here are some definitions. Encumbered. Encumbered means a purchase order or general journal line item is within the budget you set up, plus the tolerable range if you have that. The status is encumbered if the budget has been exceeded, but the purchase has been overridden and authorized anyhow. Pre-encumbered will, if you enter a purchase order and it's higher than the amount, than the budgeted amount, it will show as pre-encumbered. And then pre-budget means that the purchase order has not been approved. So something that Sean is going to talk to at the end of the day is the new R2 features. And one of them is built-in requisitions in GP. So with that, you could actually, people could come in and requisition, and it actually works with this encumbrance management product. Not to steal your thunder. So we're also going to look at, since we're talking about capital, we're going to look at, fixed assets. So we're going to walk through the entire process here, start to finish. Oh, did I close GP? Darn it. Okay, so in order to use encumbrance management, first we have to enable it, and we have to set it up. So, like I talked about, for each year we come here, we assign a GP budget. So before we can fully set up encumbrance management, we have to have at least one budget in GP. How many of you budget in GP? Good, fair amount. Again, we can set a tolerance percentage, so you can go 2% over the encumbered amount. So I have a GP budget set up. I will show you. So here in my example, I'm using a fixed asset clearing account that I put a budget for. So as I purchase fixed assets, I will always use this account. It's kind of the work in process account, if you will, where all my fixed assets go until I really turn them into fixed assets. So anyhow, I have a $100,000 budget, so I can go out and buy fixed assets up to $100,000 worth. I'm gonna hop over here to purchase orders. So I have a non-inventoried item set up for a laptop. I am going to order 5 laptops at $675 a piece. So this is going to be my purchase order. I'll go ahead and hit the site, and then I'll save this. Oh, one thing I wanted to show you before I did this. So for this line item, if I click on the blue arrow, you notice I'm hitting my inventory, my fixed asset clearing account, and I also want to check this capital item box because I'm purchasing a capital item. Now, so at this point, because I have encumbrance turned on, I'm going to get this encumbrance summary report and this audit report. And so what this shows me is here I'm going to encumber or block out or, put away $33.75 of my $100,000. And then here's my audit report. Again, same thing. So here in this window, it shows you anything that has been pre-encumbered, which means it's going over the budget. It will show you any kind of pre-budget, any invalid encumbrances. You're also able to see, if we go down here under inquiry, I can pull up a summary. I have to save for my account. And so here, it actually shows you actual expenses that have hit, any encumbered amounts, meaning they're on a PO, but I haven't received an invoice or anything yet. So again, it's a way to kind of track capital expenses or any kind of expense using the purchase order module. So again, purchasing and sales doesn't have to be for people moving inventory, it can be for other uses as well. Yes, ma'am?
So you don't set up an encumbrance or reserve for encumbrance account?
You can have a separate encumbrance account. I'm just using this email account as my. So typically in fund or government accounting, you have certain funds that have specific uses and you need this type of tracking for that. So that's where it stems from. But you can use it really on any GL account.
Kind of to help you stay within budget if you're not for profit.
It does help you stay within budget because then you go over, you start getting warnings, you get reports, you can easily see. I mean, obviously in GP or in Management Reporter, you can run actual versus budget reports, but this kind of helps you through the purchasing module so that you catch it before it's too late, before you go over.
Notify you of commitments that have yet to hit any of the financial ledgers.
Yep, you're right, because what's being encumbered here is at the purchase order level. This hasn't hit any GL account yet because we haven't received anything in, we haven't received an invoice, so
It stops you from spending those funds if you have the security set up properly.
Exactly. So it's kind of a different way to use the system. It's something, you know, to think about. Most of, or a lot of you at least, probably own these modules, so just something to think about. Absolutely. So I'm going to go in and receive and invoice my Dell laptop.
Is it something that we have to have turned on, or is it already there so we can access it?
So a lot of times, that's a good question, Stephanie. A lot of times, for clients, it's there. We have to basically turn it on. So you own the licensing for it, but we may have to go into, you know, like your all programs and just make sure it's turned on. And
most of the time, it's turned on in your registration by default, but there's actually components that you have to install.
Right.
And
Right.
database elements and things like that.
Yeah.
Once it's out there, it's there, and you have to start taking advantage of it, or triggers are there, or things of that sort.
Yeah. A lot of times, this isn't something that we would do as part of a normal install because it's typically only our not-for-profit people need to use it right away. So it could be available to you, and we just need to go in and do the install, which doesn't take a lot. It's not like a major thing.
So would this work with tracking, you know, like us where you have projects, I mean, tracking of like capital spend or things like that, or is this probably not the best use for that?
Probably not the best use for this, because this is tracking more at the GL level, GL account level, not at the project level, which I know you guys are using. Yeah. So, and again, like I said, with the addition of requisitioning in GP with R2, you know, you get the whole requisition and it flows through this process and can be approved or not approved and all of that. All right, so I'm going to receive in an invoice, my purchase order. And I'm going to go ahead and post it. I don't, why is it the one thing that doesn't light up here when you have required fields? Isn't that funny? That's not always required. Yeah, that's true. That's just understandable. Okay. So I've received my invoice, I've entered my invoice, I've received my Dell laptop. For those of you that have never seen this, once the Dell laptops have been received in, they're going to show up in my fixed assets. So now I'm on the financial page, and I'm going down under cards. Notice with GP 2013, fixed assets will auto increment and auto number, something that I, for one, am very excited about. Here is my PO for my Dell laptop. So automatically, you can pull this in and create a fixed asset from it. It will bring in the description. It will bring in the acquisition date, which would be your vendor invoice date, your vendor invoice amount. So that's how purchasing and fixed assets link, for those of you that aren't using both products or whatever.
Can you break this down into 5 separate assets?
You can. Good question. Yes. So I could create one. I could come up here and pick this and select it. And I could say 1 instead of 5. And I could also change this amount to let's say, $1,000. So you could create 5 separate ones here with it if you wanted. You could also group. So if you got 3 invoices in, but let's say it's all part of one fixed asset, you could group those and create one asset off of those. So obviously there's some fixed asset setup that needs to take place. Yes, ma'am?
So did that pull in because you used the FA clearing account or because you marked that capital item box?
From the purchase orders, because it checks that capital item box. Good question. If it was a regular payables transaction, it would be that clearing account that would trigger it. But from the purchase orders, that checkbox. Yes, ma'am.
You just changed that amount right there.
Yep.
Is that because you haven't saved that asset yet?
Yep.
Because I've saved them with the wrong amount. Then I have to go into book,
And change it.
right? Because the book doesn't pick up you can still change it there with the arrow.
Yep.
But it doesn't affect your book. Then you can change the cost basis or delete the whole thing and start over from there. So,
Yep. Good
is that right?
question. That's right.
That's right. That's all I have to do. Okay.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because occasionally, let's say you created an asset and then later freight or labor comes in and you want to add that amount to an asset, you could come back in and add that here, but then you also have to go to the book and update it there. The two don't necessarily talk to each
Or if
other.
you return part of it, you need to adjust it down,
Exactly,
same thing.
exactly. They have to adjust it in both spots. So any questions?